Or breast milk, I guess. That's another option.
We are
Oh, cow milk is
uh,
breast milk. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. We hope you enjoyed our presentation. Please do join in.
Thanks, Chris.
all right, and the theme song just ended.
Oh, wow, I said that online?
You did.
Excellent.
I didn't hear what you said, so
Oh, good.
hopefully
That's
the
probably for the best.
hopefully the music covered it up. Welcome to Quarter
Makes sense.
Comics. This is episode 11. This is your weekly comic book reading club. My friends and I get together. We share a few comic issues with each other. We read those issues. Then we get together to talk about them. We have 6 issues again this week. But let me introduce my friends. We've got Russ and Emmanuel. Russ, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you for asking. And here, some of it's for you.
Thank you. Emmanuel?
I am doing amazing. Thank you, Russ. I received that, and I'm going to give it back to the crowd as well.
Nice. I like it. You guys want to run through where everybody can find you online?
Sure, you can find me at Walrus, at WALLRUSS. You can also find me at blacksuperherofan.com and comiccreatorsofcolor.com. Tune in.
Awesome. You can find me on the gram at EM underscore MAN underscore YOU underscore EL. Spells out my name, Emmanuel. Phonetic.
Nice.
You know, there was a R&B artist called Emmanuel.
Hmm. There was a few characters, some in film and some in different genres. Yeah, Emmanuel's a pretty interesting name. It could be unisex as well.
Okay, I'm not gonna.
I like the pause there. Had to stop thinking about it. Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at Barkov, BERKOUGH. If you follow me there, you can get the reading list ahead of time. At least most weeks. I try to tweet that out on a Thursday or Friday so that everybody can see what were the comic issues that we're going to be talking about. So let's go ahead and run down. I'll do my 2. Russ, you can do your 2, and then Emmanuel, you can do your 2. My first issue this week is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is the current series, issue number 101. And my second issue this week is New Mutants, also the current run, issue number 5.
Okay, my 2 issues are Skull Digger and Skeleton Boy, number 1, from Dark Horse, and the other is You Are Obsolete from on the Aftershock label.
Nice. My 2 issues are Miles Morales, Spider-Man number 14, also the current run, and The Mask, issue number 3, the current run as well.
Yeah, I think I left the subtitle off of that. I guess it's The Mask. I pledge allegiance to the mask.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll get into that. There's several runs. I didn't realize that the mask had so many comics. I had difficulty finding it at first. But all right, so we'll go ahead. Let's start with my first issue as soon as I transition into where we can see the cover. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 101. I chose this book because I've been following the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for years, but I sort of lost track of the current run. And issue 101 supposedly is a nice place to jump back on and get back into the series. So that's exactly what I did. I picked it up this week and was actually pleasantly surprised. They've done quite a bit to sort of change what I know about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's an event that's happened, and now a section of the city is full of mutants. It's not just the turtles and their enemies. So now we have like a whole mutant community in New York. Splinter is dead. There's a female turtle, Jenny. It's interesting, and I was pleasantly surprised. So I'll let you guys take it away and let me know what your thoughts were.
All right, I'll get into it. I want to talk about the art. The art is kind of rustic but good. The tone isn't super light, so the art itself I find does the story justice. And I really thought, even though this is issue 101, really thought that they were past the whole teenage phase because it seems like a lot is happening. There's a lot going on with their lives. So the story itself, I really enjoy. Uh, it's not so light and so, I don't know, cartoony.
Right.
It's very detailed with the highs and lows of life. So I appreciate that.
Okay. So I had a few comments. One of them is when you take off their masks, don't they all look alike?
They do.
Right? So I was commenting on the fact that you got all these turtles that look alike. You're supposed to, as the reader, know the difference between all of them, and they're supposed to have facial expressions that you can read.
Right.
Right? So I say that to say I was able to do all that in this book. So I have to credit the artist, and that I never felt like I didn't know which turtle I was looking at. I never felt that I didn't get the emotion the turtle was having. All right. So I want to say that to begin with, and that that's good work there. All right. I don't think they're teenagers anymore. I think they're 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So the question is, do we change it to adolescent? Do we change it? Do we give another word beyond teenage? What's the next thing up from teenager?
Adult Mutant Ninja Turtles. Just
Yeah,
adult,
I don't want to say adult because that could be like 35, 40.
Right.
Is there something in between? Should we say collegiate Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Only Donatello's the smart one, so I don't think we can use collegiate because
Hey, well,
that
there's gotta-
denotes.
Yeah, with the disenfranchised Mutant Ninja Turtles. How about that? Anyway, I like this. I like the story. I liked where it was going. This is, and it's also sort of post-apocalyptic. You know,
A little
also
bit,
when you think about, regardless whether New York is mutated or not, most people are dicks.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Most people just are. And that was conveyed well. So New York didn't change, just people's bodies changed, right? This is something I would continue to read. This is something that, wow, wouldn't it be great if they stopped trying to reinvent the teenage portion of Ninja Turtles and create a collegiate Mutant Ninja Turtles series? Would you watch it? If it was like this, I definitely would. So this, I think, is a good find. I do recommend, if you have any inkling or interest and memory of the Turtles, and I believe the Turtles have been redone so many times that pretty much every human on the planet has a connection to one of those iterations.
Right.
And this will speak to you if you can feel that connection again. What happened, where they are now. Go ahead.
There's a some sort of, not personality test, but they're called the four humors. You see in just about any collection of four characters, Fantastic Four, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, there exist four different personality traits that really stand out. Like you have Michelangelo, which represents the more easygoing, fun aspect. You have Leonardo, which represents the more Capricornish, if you ascribe to that, like the more duty-centric, like this is my job, I'm going to perform this task. You have Raphael, who's the more impulsive, reckless, emotional aspect of things. So I think initially when it was just the four instead of the five now, they represented the four humors. And to your point regarding distinguishing them, in its inception at the beginning of Ninja Turtles, they all wore this, it was in black and white, so you really couldn't tell, but they all wore a red bandana. They all look like Raphael. So that's interesting that you mentioned how now you can distinguish them, and that's really it appeals to you when it comes to reading the storyline, because it's changed dramatically over years.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't know if you guys watch The Toys That Made Us, the Netflix series.
I've seen some of the episodes. I haven't. I'm still, I keep coming back to it, watching the next one.
They did one on the Turtles, and they talked about how, if I remember correctly, when they moved it to the animated series, or they were talking to the guy that basically, marketed the comic um, to the toy manufacturers and created the animated series and all that they had to do something to differentiate them because they figured that kids would have difficulty identifying the different personalities without having the color coding and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, kids are smart.
I
People
think
need
so
to
too.
recognize that when they program stuff for them. Kids are smart.
Yeah.
They're stupid too, but I mean, what I'm saying is they can. They're immature, but kids are capable of a great many things, more than being dumbed down to. Let them catch up. Let them come back and introspect, and then come back to it. Give them layers. Even the original Bugs Bunny cartoons had layers.
Right.
Right. And when we came back to them older, we found more in the cartoons than we had when we were young, but it was all there from day one. So definitely there should be layers.
Not just adult jokes
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't get when we were kids.
Yeah, that's what I didn't like about Yakko, Wacko, and Dot.
You didn't like them, the Animaniacs?
No, I didn't like them.
That is blasphemous.
Because
they
there
were
was no
silly, but I felt like they weren't really. It was more sight gags and grown folks talk. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just don't think they balanced that well. Same thing with Freakazoid. I'm not saying it was terrible. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it didn't deliver on all those levels at once like Bugs Bunny did.
Well, the Animaniacs, as a side note, we'll go back to comics in just a little bit. But as a side note, Animaniacs, that was my introduction to sarcasm, and that really shaped my personality. So, not that I say a lot of innuendos now, but
Tell me more.
I mean, if you take a note to my humor and everything, you can see where you can trace it back to Animaniacs. So,
all right. Yeah, I remember when that show was on. But yeah, getting back to the Turtles, I'm really interested to see where they go with this. I'm kind of curious to see what they do with the female turtle.
yes.
I was actually really surprised at how much of her personality we got in this one issue.
Yeah, there's a lot happening in this issue. You really get the status of every turtle, what's happening in their world,
Right.
what their motivations are. This is I don't want to say it's a graphic novel, but there's a lot of story here, right? If you care about the turtles as a group, but if you care about them individually, like say you're a Michelangelo type of dude, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's something there for you, but it's there in all of it. So I like that this is a really good, meaty chunk of book, but it's still a single-size issue. It gives you sort of a lot of story visually and the words, the where it's going. So and finding the platypus fighter dude. I was like, is this really a platypus? And do platypus have teeth?
I'd have to take a look at a picture. I'm not sure if they do.
I mean, they got a duck bill, right?
Right. They might.
So do they
have
need teeth?
They might have little teeth.
Yeah, I think they have little spikes. I think.
Okay, I guess we'll have to leave it to our Comic Corner Nation to figure that out for us.
Yeah. All right. Moving on, I'll get into the next issue, which is New Mutants issue number 5. I've been following this. I've been following all of the Dawn of X books, which is basically every X-Men book that has come out of House of X and Powers of X. The two that so Jonathan Hickman is sort of the architect of all of these books, but the two that he's writing are the titular X-Men book and the New Mutants. The New Mutants sort of gives us, if you're not familiar with Marvel, a Teen Titans sort of team to follow. So it's a younger group of mutants, and this is them sort of in space. So there's two groups to follow. This is following the first group of Teen Mutants. I had to drop some of the Dawn of X books because they just weren't holding my attention. But this is one that is holding my attention and keeping me interested. I picked this book in particular because I saw Hickman tweet out that the artist on this, Rod Reese, had done this entire issue in 2 days, which was absolutely insane. That one guy drew an entire issue, colored it, did all that in 2 days, just to meet the deadline. And it still holds up. Like it doesn't have any areas where there's any deficiencies in terms of my own opinion on that. So I'll kind of pass it to you guys to see what you thought.
All right, I'll go in. I will say that getting all the art together in 2 days is a monumental thing. However, I didn't love the art.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's terrible or anything like that, but it was not necessarily pleasing to me. I do like the color palette. I do like the colors chosen to bring it together. So as an inker, bam. Okay, so when did Magic, Colossus' sister, get all sexually motivated? I ain't never seen, you know what I'm saying? Are we gonna fight or have sex? I'm like, what? Who sees Colossus' little sister? What the hell?
Well, she's a little bit older in this rendition, I believe.
I'm just saying this is a big change because I'm looking for. I want consistency in character. I want to know character with some adjustments is still the same dude.
Right.
You know what I mean? Sunspot is still the same dude. Some arrogant rich. I'm right. Beautiful. And I'm pretty, and I should be able to have whatever I want. He's kind of always been that. So he was right in line with the Sunspot we knew from the day one of New, right? There's a lot of characters, so you didn't get a lot of dialogue. But Magic just came off like taking over and sex, right?
Yeah.
And just out the blue, and it was so shocking, not just to me, but to the people. See, I had sex and fights. They were like. Right? I'm like, because I knew it was shocking to me. And I like that it was shocking to the other characters that she said it to as well. Because that sort of makes sense that this isn't some just thing we do, right?
Right.
So that sort of threw me. I like the little things like that. I did not feel compelled to, I need to follow this.
Okay.
But did I enjoy this enough to say, yeah, this is pretty good? I'll say yes. Honestly, if the art was better for me, I would probably be more compelled to continue. But I feel like the art, and I know this is just, and normally I wouldn't even know that this was done in 2 days. I would think they took the usual month to do it. So I look at the book of, this is a month-long thing. This is what you get. So I like the story and the dialogue a lot better than the art. And if the art was more where I felt the story and everything else was, I would be more compelled to continue. I'm not saying I won't come back to it, but it didn't put me over the edge. I gotta have more of this. The Turtles, however, made me think, I do want to read more of this. I didn't know I needed this, and now I do. Manuel, what do you got to say?
I actually appreciated the art. It did seem a little phoned in. What had you not told me about the 2 days, I would have been more unimpressed. I'm slightly more impressed now that I see that this was all done in 2 days. There were a few panels which, when someone's in the foreground, you can kind of see them. I don't know how to describe it except for old school comic book. It's kind of not really colored in. It's just, I don't know how to describe it. You have to purchase the comic or look at the comic to actually see what I mean. But someone in the foreground, they have a lot less detail than someone kind of slightly further on. So that was interesting, that juxtaposition between a more detailed picture versus something that's closer, but it's still not as detailed. Okay. That was cool. The story itself, I'm not really, this may come as a shocker to you guys, but I'm not really an X-Men. I haven't mentioned this before, but I'm not really an X-Men. So this actually was interesting. I enjoyed this. Yeah, I use the E word. I could actually enjoy this issue. One of the things which intrigued me about this is because some of the characters are from the new Mutants movie that's coming up, which is going to be kind of like a thriller, not necessarily in the vein of the previous Marvel movies we've seen before. So
Right.
that's interesting. And I'm not really too familiar with the characters. I can recognize them. I know their names. I know slightly a bit about their character. But reading this, seeing Sunspot be more like the I'm not really a Fantastic Four fan either. So the Flame On, the Human Torch,
Johnny
like
Storm.
he's kind of like him. Yeah, Johnny Storm, with the exception of being rich. He's still arrogant and um, attractive and self-aware. So that's pretty cool. I really did enjoy this though. It didn't seem to me like a space fight, more so than a fight that just so happens to be in space, a room fight, a corridor fight, than a space fight because there was little to no pew pew. There was
Okay.
no pew pew guns. There was no beaming. Well, there was beaming aboard, I guess. That happened off panel. Just saw them transporting from one ship to the next. They just appeared on the next ship. But all in all, I enjoyed it. It wouldn't cause me to buy the next issue. So maybe that says something, but I liked it.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, I like the characters. The magic thing did kind of throw me off, where she's talking about making out with these random characters. Um,
And three of them at once. Like, what's the
yeah,
big deal?
yeah.
Man,
I will say I think overall, like the first two issues, sort of sets up why they're in space or how they got into space, and I think we'll probably get more space opera stuff like later on. So there might be starships fighting and more pew pew in later issues. At least hopefully that would be nice if we did see some of that stuff. So
and yeah, I want to throw in also that point I made about if every mutant can never always be resurrected, why does Chambers still have no chin and neck?
that I don't know. I guess that's just the way that his power manifests. So
No, so
even
what happened is he has that, but if he just sort of lets his power out too much, you know what I mean, flares up too much, then it sort of blows it all out,
okay,
right? So he's been healed before, and then he blew it out again. But
okay,
now that you could just get a new body by going to the X-Men bank, you know what I'm saying? Just like, I don't like, I'm feeling a little old in this one. Can I get a scar-free new body, please? And they were like, yeah, we got an egg for you. So I'm just thinking he would just go get that treatment, but he didn't.
yeah,
Maybe,
they have.
who knows? Does he even have a tongue? I don't even know, right? Because he's speaking with mind speak. I don't know what the heck's going on.
Yeah, they haven't explained that. Maybe we'll get that in a future issue. Maybe Hickman's listening and watching. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Um, all right. Yeah, so those are my two issues. Russ, you want to get into your first issue?
Yes. My first issue of the week is Skull Digger and Skeleton Boy. Now, this is a Jeff Lemire book. This is in the Black Hammer universe. So, sort of throwback, sort of a little more raw. Could have happened back in the 60s instead of the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. And so, because I like the writer and because I like the universe, I took a look at this and I thought, hey, Hooded Justice and Batman had a child. You know what I mean? Had a progeny, and that's Skull Digger. That's to me, Hooded Justice, if you don't know, from the Watchmen. So anyway, this is my pick. What do you think?
I'll go first. I liked it. I didn't really get Hooded Justice meets Batman. I got Batman meets Punisher.
Okay.
With some serious psychological defects.
Which is probably likely that they glossed it over for Batman, right?
Yeah. So the issue starts off with what you think is going to be just a blatant ripoff of Batman, but it's sort of the setup for Skulldigger's Robin, which is Skeleton Boy. At least I think he's going to be Skeleton Boy. That's the way that they set it up in this issue. I haven't read the other ones. But yeah, Jeff Lemire, I like his writing, and all of his characters are seriously messed up in the head. Like that, and that's one of the things that makes his Moon Knight so fascinating. is how crazy that character is. Um, the artwork, I'm not a huge fan of the artwork here. It feels a little flat. Um, but it works for the story. So it's serviceable. You do get emotion and expression on the faces. There is some movement. I don't know if maybe it's the line art or the colors that need to be changed up a little bit for me to be more engaged with it. But it did work. It carried the story along. Um, I'm really curious to see who this the guy that looks like Killer Croc is. Um, I'm assuming
Oh,
that
the Conquistador.
is that what his name is.
Weird name.
Yeah, if you follow along with what was the original book I was telling you about?
Black
Black
Hammer?
Hammer and the new series, he shows up. I don't know if he I haven't there's quite a few different they do, basically sort of 12 issue series or 10 issue series, and then they go on to another story. So he shows up in some of those. I haven't read all of them.
Okay.
But my memory of the Conquistador, I don't know if he was a good guy or a bad guy, but he at this current run, I think he's sort of the warden of the jail of super criminals.
Okay. All right. Yes, and I guess the only other thing that I would add to this is I'm really curious why Jeff Lemire is doing this with Dark Horse, and whether or not this is creator owned, or if he's giving all this to Dark Horse to own forever for other people to write. Because a lot of times you don't see this kind of stuff under the Dark Horse imprint; you see it under Image. That's where all creators go to do their creator-owned content, or to do new stories. So it's kind of interesting to see that this is being put out by Dark Horse. So,
okay.
Manuel?
All right. So my take, I would think that initially the Batman, we all thought Bruce Wayne and the parents dying. We all can agree upon that. Mine is Crossbones, the second one. Bruce Wayne meets Crossbones, simply because not just the visuals, but the Skull Digger actually has somewhat of a personality of Crossbones. Not necessarily in his fighting style, but just in his, I don't care, I'm playing by my own rules. This is the law, according to me. So I appreciated that. Every other character, with the exception of Skull Digger, and even though the boy said less than a full paragraph throughout the whole comic, I think he has more character development, I think, than any of the police detectives or the police. They all seemed one-dimensional. Like they had their one motivation and going forward. They attempted to do some sort of dimensions by alluding to the fact that one of the detectives is a lesbian, but going forward, like there's nothing else I can see appealing about them besides just them establishing law, like trying to find Skull Digger and trying to put him away. But Skeleton Boy, he narrated, so he spoke, but not verbally. That was appealing to me. His character, his lack of dialogue. I think there's a theme between last week's episode and this one, me and lack of dialogue. But the lack of dialogue, it's all internal. And narration is a hit or miss for me sometimes, but this time it really worked. And towards the end, I'm not going to spoil it, but it gives promise to a perspective shift, which I think is great character development. If a character looks at things one way and you're following along with that character, and then you get some information that he'll or she'll completely go 180, then you're along for that ride as well. You'll see what changed in his or her perspective. So I appreciate that.
Sort of the hero's journey conversation. Whereas this guy was going on through his life and would have lived, and then something dramatic happened. And whatever his direction and arc and consciousness totally changed, right? And now he is this. So not the powers, but who the person, the individual, the character, that change is more important than whatever superpowers or whatever, that may or may not.
Exactly. I appreciate consistency. There's something to be said about consistency, but that whole dimension shift as well, perspective shift, that's interesting too. So just human behavior and character development in a book, this does that for me. even though it's page 1 or episode 1.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to what goes on.
Have either of you seen the Watchmen series, TV series?
Yes.
No.
So that's why, and it's definitely worth your time, by the way. But
Mhm.
that's what made me think Hooded Justice. I think that time, how he's going to deliver that justice, very much sort of in line with that, more than the Punisher, who just really just will shoot you. This
Okay.
guy wants to bash you. It's kind of very different. He wants to break you. Sort of like Bane would break you. He wants to, violently, not even worried about if your spleen is still there when he's done, not worried about if he needs to shoot a gun. I'm here to break you and move on to my next thing.
Okay.
And I felt like Hooded Justice, come in. I'm here to break you and save the day and get up out of here. I ain't really into all this other stuff. So that's what made me think Hooded Justice. Because I don't think Hooded Justice is really in the Watchmen comics. There's not much. You don't really get to see much. He's just somebody who's there and part of the backdrop of the history.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you bring that up because I didn't really draw a parallel between him being a butcher and what you were talking about until just now. So, like his alter ego, he runs a butcher shop, I'm assuming.
Yes, he is.
So yeah, like
And the butcher.
what does that mean for the bad guys? Does he, if he wants to make somebody disappear, could he do it?
Just bring all the meat to Hannibal and have him deliver it up.
Right.
Anybody watching the Netflix series You?
It's on my list.
Okay.
But I haven't started it yet.
And there's a episode where I'm not gonna give too much away, but they use a butcher and equipment and stuff.
But
For any of you watching, who've ever seen who's up to date on the new season, you understand exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
did you either of you watch the Hannibal live action series?
Mm-mm.
No.
Okay. All 3 seasons, and this is probably the most gruesome thing that I have ever seen on television. Okay. Period. There's a part in one episode where Hannibal is so into this guy's head that this guy is cutting pieces off of his own face and eating it on screen. And yet it was on NBC, right? So there's that. So Hannibal. This is Hannibal. Sort of. I won't say Hannibal begins, but this is before they know who he is.
Okay.
Right. The FBI agent chasing him is Lawrence Fishburne.
Nice.
And there's a battleground in the mind of one guy who has the ability to sort of get into the mind of the killer, but he's changed by it every time that happens. And Hannibal is called on to help him because Hannibal's a psychiatrist. So the person they're chasing and Hannibal gets to meet other killers that way. And they'll find out that they're chasing him. So it's really deep. It's really well written. I highly recommend it. If you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it all. It is worth your time. And I like it because Hannibal has always been a very, very intelligent, purposeful character, right? Everything is done for a reason. Everything is meticulous. Even the words that he chooses when he talks to you is chosen. And he breaks all that down and still can look you in your eye, lie to your face, and plot your demise with pretty much guaranteed certainty. He's that kind of Hannibal.
Well, he's kind of like
watch it.
He's like a Moriarty character anyway, right?
Yes, with nobody on his level. But Lawrence Fishburne tries a lot hard. It's really, Anyway, I really want people to watch that, so I'll move on. I'll let it go. I just because of the butchery, made me think of that. All right. My next book is called "You Are Obsolete." All right, and when I first saw the cover, I was like, "This doesn't look like my kind of book."
Right.
But I was like, "I'll read it anyway." So I read it, and then what it feels like to me was like some Russian country, some country in Mother Russia, where the children have somehow taken over the town. No superpowers, but somehow they have found a way to take over the entire town. How does that happen? How is that possible? And that I was interested in how that could happen. So I went on and read some other issues, but
Mhm.
that's what brought me into it. I like the grimy Russian. I don't want to say grimy Russian because that's stereotypical and that's not right. But it felt grimy and it felt European, and I was like, yeah, I can probably work with that. And I kind of enjoyed it, but I'd really like to hear what you
Okay. I really, it took me by surprise. This was very eerie. Now, anytime a child is in a comic book and it's not like a stereotypical joyful child, or it's just a somber, I'm not going to speak, I'm just going to be on my phone. Even in the last issue, when the child really didn't speak much, you understood why he went through what he, or why he didn't speak, because he went through what he went through. But a child just not speaking, a kid, it's it's something eerie about that. And the fact that it's multiplied by many children within the same city or town, and it was creepy. The whole feel of the comic, even go as far as to say it's the art. The art to me fell in line. It's very dark, and not that they use dark tones, because there were some bright panels, but it just is written and drawn very darkly. Gives a very eerie feel to it. Um, I don't think we're giving away too much by saying that the benchmark is 40, that every character dies by the time they get to 40. That's introducing the first few panels. So why? The real question is why? What do the kids have to do with that? It's really interesting.
Yeah, it definitely reminds me of Black Mirror, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits. It has that kind of vibe to it. There's also, I'm trying to think, there's one episode of Star Trek, the original series, where they beam down to a planet and it's all children or mostly children. So it kind of has that vibe to it as well. Like, um, why are these kids running the town? Why do people die at 40? Um, those are questions that you ask. Um, I liked the book for the concepts, but I feel like it took way too long to get to anything. It's clearly written for like a graphic novel, um, or at least the first story arc is definitely meant for like a trade. Um, yeah, I don't know. This is kind of my least favorite book of the week, Russ. So I apologize
think.
for that because most of the time you hit it out of the park. Um, I did check this out like a couple of weeks ago after Emmanuel had mentioned or had brought in that second Aftershock book. So I've breezed through it before. Um, I couldn't get into it then, and I tried this time to really get into it, but it was difficult. Yeah,
I think we were meant to find out as the reporter finds out. So you
Mm.
can't go any faster than her,
yeah,
right? As she finds out more, you find out more. And then, of course, she's flawed as all hell. And you, even in the issue after this, if you choose to read it, you see, how she fell from grace, the true level of her flaws, and why she was chosen. Uh, but I think I couldn't figure out, and that's what I like. I couldn't figure out how did these kids, preteen children, take over an entire town without superpowers, right?
right.
How does that happen? And I wanted someone to explain that to me. That interests me, and that is what moved me forward because even though things were being delivered and I was following along, it made me think of a TV series. This was episode 1. You're not getting it all here, right? You're
Right.
not getting it all in episode 5, right? But each episode, more is unfolded, right? And then we'll do a back in time episode where we see some of the stuff that happened before. So I felt like this is, because it is an ongoing book, you only get to see, you don't get to see the master plan. You don't get to see the what I did like is when they were like 20 kids in the car, all with their faces on the glass.
Yeah,
That was
I
awesome.
didn't get.
That
I
image
didn't get
is
that at all.
is weird.
Creepiness. So I'm thinking if this was a TV series, it would go just like this, right? The reporter would be called in, you see a little bit, right? You see there's something going on here, and then you got to wait till next episode to
Yeah.
see more. So I felt like this was that. Now, if there's not enough to make it come back to episode 2, I get that. I needed these questions answered. I need to know because I'm thinking if I was in charge of a bunch of kids, how could I get them to take over a town? My evil mastermind brain was working,
Right.
right? Like, how do I get a whole town taken over? Because you can influence children, and children have power because they're not locked into the paradigm of the adults, right?
Right.
So if I could control the children, can I then control the town? And how do I go about doing that? And I wanted to know because my evil maniacal brain was tickled.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right, Emmanuel, what you got?
All right. So moving on to my picks. The first one, Spider-Man number 14. Well, Miles Morales, Spider-Man number 14. We had mentioned before how Miles Morales is very, very different from Peter Parker. And I think this issue kind of details that in a little bit more interesting perspective because it has his life. It goes about his life with his best friend, his new addition to his family, which is his baby sister, details with his schooling, how he's not in good academic standing with all of his teachers. So I think this is good. It's sort of one of those issues that not a lot happens. I wouldn't necessarily call it a filler, but it is a good segue from one big storyline to another big storyline. This is a great segue. And in my opinion, it kind of really shows who Miles Morales is in relation to his powers, his family, his friends, and his school.
Okay, I felt that Miles Morales in this book was very much like Peter Parker. Not able to get his life to work out the way he wants because he's too busy out there fighting crime and beating bad guys up and talking mess to him. Now, his style of the messy talk is certainly a Miles Morales style, not a Peter Parker style, but it's still, a style of talking mess and messing with the superstitious, cowardly lot that we know villains are. And all the things in his life that he's trying to keep together and keep straight, he can't do it and be Spider-Man. I felt this was very classic Spider-Man in that respect. And then somebody maybe found out a secret because he wasn't paying attention or whatever. I felt like if Peter Parker, if this was a Peter Parker book and not a Miles Morales book, it could be the same story with maybe some tweaks to the flavor. So I felt this was very much a Peter Parker Spider-Man type of book. One of the things that I've always liked about Miles Morales is because I felt like he was in a loving relationship with his family. He had, a little more structure, but now it's like this, he ain't even seen his homie and, weeks, that they're roommates. You know what I mean? He's too busy doing all these other different things. And he has some nice things in his life. And instead of having a Mary Jane, he's got a little sister. So I'm cool with that. But I felt like, and it's not a negative thing. I just felt like this was a very Peter Parker, almost stereotypical Peter Parker type of story. Because when Peter Parker was in high school, a lot of these same things could have happened. Except for he doesn't have the zapping and invisible powers. You know what I mean?
It's interesting. So I don't put all of my notes in the doc that we share. I keep some of my notes to myself, and that's exactly what I wrote. This is a fun, classic Spider-Man story. I liked it. I think the art is really good. It's kind of interesting because episode 1 of Corner Comics, Emmanuel, you had brought on issue number 11, and I hadn't read it since then. So then to jump back in, I was like, oh yeah, there is this drug that we still don't know anything about, and these other gangs. So it's kind of cool to get more of that story, and to sort of see. There was one of the pages and panels where he's got the gang members all tied up, and he's secured the drugs or destroyed the drugs and got a vial for himself to test it out. and he's like, "Yeah, the cops are on their way," and the one gang member says, "Oh, Fisk's cops? That's fine. That's cool." And it's like, oh, is there like this, underlying current of corruption that's going on? And um, so I might actually continue reading this. I might pick it up the next issue that comes out. I thought it was good. Yeah, it's a classic Spider-Man story. It was kind of interesting to see, because like you guys mentioned, Miles Morales is a little more put together, I feel like, than Peter Parker most of the time. So it was interesting to see him slip up. I guess spoiler alert, he loses his journal. Why the hell is he keeping a journal and writing all this shit down? Like,
Right.
Well, okay. One of the reasons is he has an assignment, right? The same teacher who thinks he's a good writer
okay,
called upon him to write a journal. Remember, Miles Morales is a child. So if you're trying to put adult logic on Miles Morales, you may be doing not what you should be doing.
Right.
Miles Morales is ninth grade. You know what I mean? So he's allowed to make mistakes. Yeah, he understands big concepts.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, he has good mentors. But having been a teacher, I know that while many young people can reach up and do better, I can't get upset if they, for at times, act their age.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was to the detriment of his character or anything. Like it made the story more interesting for me because sometimes
And
it's
he can't. Yeah, he
sometimes
can't kill him.
right. Sometimes it's the flaws that make a good
Yeah.
story. So
I so I like Miles Morales more than Peter Parker, usually because Peter Parker is in an endless spiral of guilt and failure and having a good moment, but being ripped and beat all up out to hell to have a moment of triumph that only lasts until the next book when somebody else is trying to take him down. And so there's a lot of, will Peter ever make it? Will he ever get it together?
right.
And so Miles Morales, I felt like delivered, mainly because Miles Morales has a lot more caring people in his life than Peter ever did, right?
Mhm.
Peter pretty much had Aunt May, right? For decades, Aunt May was it, and the ghost of Ben. And then, for a minute, it was Tony Stark, that sort of thing, way later, right? Miles Morales has his parents, who knows who he are, his evil uncle, who loves him and knows who he is. Right. He has Peter Parker. He has his best friend, unlike Peter Parker, who never could tell his best friend. Miles Morales has a best friend who knows and actively covers for him and loves him and wants to be the man in the chair. So he has a support group that enables him to, even if he's off kilter, sort of lean into the people that love him. So for me, he can be more who he's designed to be. Like maybe he's never going to be Spider-Man in the future, because if you take away the webs, maybe he's James Bond.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
Before we go off this issue, I want to note one of the big differences I think in Miles Morales and Peter Parker is in the 1610, the Ultimate Universe, where it all originated, where Miles Morales first came about. The character that killed Peter Parker, because remember, Miles Morales, he has this great sense of responsibility because that Earth's Peter Parker died in a fight with Green Goblin. And it wasn't this slim Green Goblin, just a man with a mask. It was this big, buffed out, mutated, hulking Green Goblin that could fly, had fireballs that it could generate from his hands and throw, and it was massive. And it died in a battle. Young Peter Parker died in a battle with that Green Goblin. In this issue, you see Miles Morales take out that Green Goblin in one fight. And yes, it kind of cost him a little bit. He got kind of drowsy because he used a lot of his Venom Blast, but it really didn't take him too much effort. And I think that's symbolic.
And I'm a little worried about that because when Miles Morales did fight him in the Ultimate Universe, he couldn't do that. Right?
Yeah.
He couldn't beat the Goblin in a fair fight. He gets the licks in, but he was outclassed. This is supposedly the same Goblin, right? From that other universe, even though Miles Morales doesn't know he's from that universe. You know what I
Right.
mean? This is still that same Goblin. So for me, the theory is Miles should still not be able to beat them. He's not stronger. He's not faster. He doesn't have new abilities. So it worried me a little. Like, how is he actually able to beat him when he couldn't beat him before?
Well, in that initial battle, he really, I wouldn't say he necessarily won, but he really put up a great fight. And his Venom Blast really took out the Green Goblin then, that Venom Blast. And then now his powers have evolved a bit. You notice his Venom Blast isn't just I touch you, wait a couple seconds, and it hurts you now. Now it's an actual projection. It comes from his fist and it's an actual projection onto his enemy. So his powers are evolving, or at least that. I don't think
Yeah.
his
Yeah, it feels like a
invisibility.
fluctuation. So I'm still waiting. You know, what I mean, you know how when you look at Superman comics, sometimes Superman is this strong, sometimes he's this
Right.
strong, sometimes he's right. And so, but the only way you can judge him is to see what they fought against before. Because
Mhm.
there are times when Superman can bench press a planet, and there are times when Superman can't take a blow from Darkseid. You know what I mean? Which is what is the power level? So I'm always leery of all of a sudden he has evolved, but the Green Goblin from the Ultimate Universe, who is smarter, hasn't.
Well,
You know, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong here. It's just it's noteworthy to me.
so my understanding is that Norman Osborn from the Ultimate Universe, the reason that he's the Green Goblin like this, the monster Green Goblin, is because of the super soldier serum that he created, right?
Yes.
Maybe that's affecting his ability to think or something like that. Maybe there's underlying mutations or something, and maybe that's why Miles was able to take him out. Maybe he's not as strong as he was in the prior issue or something. I don't know.
And that is what I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting for that little piece, just like Chambers' face. I'm waiting for that little piece to pop into something I could read.
Where it makes
and
more
just
sense.
say, yeah. So maybe it'll show up in a flashback. Maybe it'll show up in the next episode or next book. But I felt like something was missing there to explain that this was very, very opposite to the previous battle. Because even though Spider-Man was winded, in the previous battle with him, Spider-Man was beat up. You know what I mean? Battered and bruised, even with the fight. You know what I'm saying? Even with the hitting him with all his strength, even with using his venom blast, Spider-Man was really hurt. Here, Spider-Man just winded.
Right.
So, and I'm not saying it didn't cost him. I'm just looking for that other piece of information that helps me understand how this fight is so different.
Okay.
And your explanation may work. I just didn't see it in the book yet.
No, they don't really allude to it. I was just theorizing that maybe something like that could happen or was happening.
Yeah, he could be dying. The universe is dead. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, want to move on to the last issue of the week?
Yep. My last issue is The Mask. I pledge allegiance to The Mask. This is if you're familiar with the 1990 something movie, we're not counting The Mask 2. We're counting the one with Jim Carrey. This is kind of sort of in the same universe, but the Mask books have always been super dark. Always. The movie itself was very cartoonish and very audience friendly. The Mask books, this is issue number 3, gory, bloody, and this is very political. What do you guys think of it?
Go ahead.
I'll go first. It definitely wears its politics on its sleeve. That I don't think the author makes any bones about that. My only experience with The Mask is the movie, the Jim Carrey movie. So, this definitely threw me back. I mean, it's violent. It's heavily satirical. It is very dark. It's it brings a whole nother level to the concept of this mask that brings out certain aspects of the wearer. it was kind of interesting that we had multiple wearers in this issue as well. So we got to see sort of like more how the world itself was sort of reacting to the circumstances by hyper like hyperly personifying those emotions and those aspects of these individual characters. Yeah, those are my initial thoughts. Russ, you want to chime in?
No, you cannot hear us at the moment.
No, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Scared me there for a minute. I was like, what happened?
Yeah, I had a little pop-up that says your microphone is not working. So this made me think, see, there's two parts of the story. There's the guy that's the mask, that's just crazy and balls to the wall, whatever. But in every crazy scenario, the rest of the world is also a character. So when I think of, when you look at our current president, and you say, he really is crazy or whatever, but they have so many supporters that he couldn't be allowed to do these things if, if not for his nation. You know what I mean?
Right.
So imagine our president with the mask, right? Would this really be so different? I'll destroy her on the microphone, right? Would this really be that different? And is it, maybe he has the mask so you can't see it.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I feel like the author is like, well, our president does wear, this mask.
Yeah, and does say all these things that, and people eat it up, right? Yeah, I want more of that, right? So when you say satirical, this made me think like, this is a younger version of our current president. Whether or not the mask is green, isn't it kind of, it's a lot very similar? Isn't a lot of the same? You know what I mean? So I felt like it was his commentary on that. Yeah. And it's not just him as the character, it's that so many people eat that up, right? So many people want, give me more. I know you're lying. I know you're crazy, but you're my kind of crazy. Give me more of that. You got my support. I felt it was more like that. There was a book, Archie Comics had their own superheroes, right?
Yeah.
One of them was, I think, the Black Mask or something like that, or some kind of mask guy. And that's kind of all he was. But there was one comic run where the mask itself was the personality. So what would happen is someone would find a mask, put it on, and that whatever that character was, will go about do his business or whatever, and may end up dying in the process, and the mask will come off. And then someone else will pick up the mask. And didn't know anything about the history, and it would continue. Like, does the mask have its own agenda? Or is it really the agenda of the people that put it on?
Yeah, I mean, the impression that I got was that the mask brings out personality traits in the wearer. But maybe, I don't know, maybe you're right. Because there's one panel where it says, bury this in the ice, don't put it on, with one of the wearers that finds the mask. So yeah, it could be the mask itself is, has these traits that it's imparting on the wearer.
Right? Because no one that gets a mask in the history of the books, and I've read a few of them as well, nobody really is a good guy. You know what I mean? Regardless of where you start, there's some people are really good people, they put on the mask and they're not anymore. They're just not. And somebody's got to die. Somebody puts on a mask, somebody else got to die. That's kind of it, right?
Yeah.
Right? Everybody that's ever had the mask has pulled out a gun, had shot somebody, right? You are instantly jokerized, right? The minute you put on the mask, no matter who you were before. So you think, people say this fans to flame of certain of your characteristics, but what if it doesn't do that shit at all? What if it just makes you evil and crazy, but your own flavor of evil and crazy?
Okay.
But you can't not be evil and crazy.
So there's actually one panel where two people are having a conversation. They're both maskless, and the mask is on the table. You see her dialogue, you see his dialogue. then you also see the Mask's dialogue. Like, what is wrong with you? So the Mask itself is a character within the writing, in the story. So, like to your point, it actually influences the wearer. It's not just the wearer and his or her characteristics are amplified. The Mask itself is a character, has its agenda as
Okay.
well.
It's like an evil talisman. Does it also affect you even before you put it on?
Hmm.
Does it call to you? Does it start making you think things before you put it on? Does it cause you to wear it? Does the mask want to be worn?
That's an interesting thought because I didn't really think like the page that Emmanuel's referring to. I just went back to it right now, and when I originally read it, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking, well, it's just the Mask's commentary on the situation, but maybe it is sort of influencing on a certain level these two characters. Um, so yeah, that's a possibility.
Because there's never a masked superhero. You know, there's a lot of masked series and runs, but nobody's a good guy, right? Even the people that say they're doing a good thing, it's like if the Joker tried to be a good guy. He still shoot a bunch of people. You know, that's so. Anyway, I think the mask is something more. And of course, it could be the current writer that thinks that, right? It may not be what the original idea of the mask was. But you know, one thing about the mask is that it could also be a TV show. It doesn't need that many special effects,
Yeah.
right? Especially if you do it like this. You know what I
Right.
mean? Where there's not so much Jim Carrey shape changing, so more as things appearing. You know what I mean? And maybe a couple of dialogue boxes in real life. So this could very well, if someone could write that story, could very well be another series. And Netflix needs to keep it, you know, in the game, so they might as well jump on this.
With the popularization of Deadpool, I think this he doesn't necessarily break the fourth wall, but like this meta humor that the Mask has, or not even humor, but the meta awareness that the Mask has would be really, really good. Side note: there was a death battle between Deadpool and the Mask.
Death battle.
Death battle. It was amazing. You should watch it.
Yeah, I watch it.
Yeah, it was great.
Um, so Harley Quinn has a new book coming to DC Black Label. So that means cussing and killing
Okay.
with DC characters. They've already released a little piece of it. So cussing, killing, and sex in the world of Harley Quinn might be something you need to see, especially considering the animated series that's already on DC streaming service.
Mhm.
But to make DC just own it and say we're going full R in the comics, this is not for you. This is not your child's comic. I may have to read that.
Will Birds of Prey be R-rated? I haven't looked that up.
I don't know. I feel like it might be, but I can't remember reading something specifically. But the problem with a movie is that it's got to get all of it right in the 1 2-hour frame, as opposed to a comic book series,
Right.
which can really itemize the things you want to do, because you know you're guaranteed to get a certain amount of books. But I do think everyone needs to watch that comic series. You know, in the absence of the Boondocks, we need something, right? What else is there that plays in that space that gives you social commentary and straight up foul? You know what I mean? And I know whoever does American Dad and all these keeps bringing sort of. I feel like they're all the same story, just you know, they're all the same characters, the same issues. But I'm looking for a different narrative, sort of a different conversation, a different writer, and so there needs to be more of that. But we shall see.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think anything's gonna quite get to the level of somebody yelling fake news and then snapping another person's neck, which is what happens in this issue.
Yes. Now here's the thing. The question is, if our president thought he could physically do it successfully, would he try it?
I'm gonna leave that up to the imaginations
Yes, that's all I ask.
of our viewers and
Imaginate this.
listeners. So
I have my opinion.
on that note, gentlemen, do we want to go ahead and wrap things up? Any final thoughts on the
Right.
mask?
No, you did have something. I don't know what our time frame is like.
Oh yeah, the so I had put something at the top of the show notes, and I wanted to sort of bring this in because I thought it was interesting. So Action Comics #1 was 10 cents. That was the cover price in 1938. 10 cents in 1938 is equivalent to $1.74 today. Most comics on the shelf, if you go to a comic store, are $4. My argument would be that the price of comics has not necessarily gone up, but the quality has improved or doubled. And I wanted to know what your guys' thoughts were.
Okay, so here's
on
my
that.
counter argument. I won't refute your facts, but I'll add another.
Okay.
Purchasing power. If you
Has
think of
changed.
what my allowance was, when I originally bought comics, they were still only 35 cents. My allowance was like $5,
Okay.
right? So for a week. So for that money, I got a stack of books for my allowance, right?
Right.
I couldn't even finish in the week. It was glorious. I would take on all these books, and it would take me all week to read it, and there would be more tomorrow. It was such the greatest use of my allowance. Right? I didn't even spend all my allowance really because I couldn't get that many. Just wasn't that many books coming out. Now, what's the allowance of a middle schooler?
I don't think they
Give me
get
a
a
number.
allowance.
$20
Okay.
maybe. 20 or
20
30 bucks.
bucks.
Yeah.
20 bucks gets you 4 or 5 books.
Yeah.
Doesn't cut it. So regardless of what you say about the price, our buying power as Americans is not the same, not in any way. Kids can't play in that space the same way. You can talk about the quality. It's like saying, well, you know, the value of a Ferrari based on the price is a good value. And I go, bitch, I ain't got that kind of money. Right? So let's say a Ferrari, you can get a Ferrari for 50 grand, right? That's way cheaper than it's such a great deal, right? Bitch, I ain't got 50 grand.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right? So it doesn't matter the value of what you bring if my buying powers can't be in that space. So
Right.
my thought is it's not in alignment with the buying power of Americans, right? What you get, and I have to spend according to my buying power. So what you think the value is not at all relevant to what I have to, how I have to value it based on my spending ability,
Okay.
right? So it's like saying, well, this is a good deal. Fuck you, right? It's not a good deal because I still can't afford that shit. So now if a middle school kid can buy 10 books, you know what I mean, a week, well, shit.
All right.
I'd be buying 10 books a week because I'm at least gonna give myself allowance I give to a middle school kid, right?
Right.
But I can't. But right now, if you buy 5 books, that's that's 20 bucks. You know what I mean? That's not a small amount of money, right? And then we're not even guaranteed that the book's gonna be that good. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of garbage coming out in fancy colors and foldable and glistening and all of that, right? But you're not guaranteed, But when they were still only 35 cents, and I bought a stack for my $3 and something, right?
You could have a couple.
If some of them were just okay, I wasn't mad,
You get in mind.
right? Because I still can't even read all these fucking books. It's so great. It's so awesome. You see what brought me into that, right? It was like something wrote something for me, and I can't get enough of it, and they keep it coming, right? It was like the soap operas for children. Right? And the characters never fucking die. But now I can't afford Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, Justice League, Avengers. I can't afford all these bitches. And then how many Avengers books are there? How many Spider-Man books are there? How many X-Men books are there? Are you fucking kidding me? I can go broke just trying to do X-Men like some people here have. Right?
I've gone broke, but yeah.
So I say, stop telling me what the value is and what the dollar is, and recognize that this is what a lot of older people my age don't get about younger people in the world now, is that they don't have the same spending power
Right.
that we had, or that me and my group had. right? My group could, when I got out of high school, I could just on grit and hustle get me a job that paid me enough. Now, people getting out of high school is fighting for McDonald's part-time jobs,
Yeah.
right? It's not the same world. So comics either need to adjust, and then you're going to charge me the same thing for digital. Get the fuck out of here, right?
That
So
that I don't like. I think digital comics should be cheaper. We should have, like new issues digitally should be like $1. You know what I mean?
because it doesn't cost you anything to reproduce it. Once you've got the digital book ready once, you're not even, spending anything.
Right.
At the very least, a subscription thing like Netflix where I can read them all should exist for every comic there is.
Yeah, I will say the only times that I do buy digital books is usually when Comixology has a sale, and I can get an issue for 50 cents or $1, and it's something that I want to read, or it's a trade and it's on sale for like $3 or something like that. Then it's worth it for me to be able to get 6 issues for $3 digitally or whatever. So
I'm telling you, just meet me at the local bookshop. Let's get a latte. Let's each pick a graphic novel and sit there and just chill with the brethren and just read, get activated, and just have a good day of it. Because it's not designed, and I know they got to make money. I'm not saying they ain't got to make money. Find another way. Did you hear about this streaming service that is coming out with big names? And they're going to come out of nowhere, but their content is their TV shows, the shows they're going to show are 15 minutes long.
No,
or less.
What's the name of it?
I'm going to find it. Well, you guys
Interesting
tell us
concept,
something
yeah.
else, but let's see.
So, Emmanuel, what are your thoughts on purchasing power and the price of comics?
Yeah, I think in 1938 it was a completely different world. Completely different world. Purchasing power being one of the biggest aspects. Now, even if you have a 2-parent household, it's still barely enough. You're barely scraping the surface of being just able to make it. So I completely agree. Here in, 2020 now,
Right.
one person being able to just hold down the fort and hold down the household. Me personally, being a single male, like I don't really have a lot of money to spend here and spend there and spend there. I would love to, but like rent and insurance and all the plethora of things that are vital to everyday life here
Like
in the
chicken.
United States. Yes, like chicken. I don't know where that came from, but yeah,
I gotta
like
have chicken, man, every day. But shit, I need a lot of chicken in my life.
I'm trying to like stay away from meat. So,
Good
but
for you.
chicken as in food, yes. But yeah,
The name of this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, yeah, you go.
The name of this new thing is called Quibi. QUIBI.
Quibi.
Quick Bites, Big Stories.
Huh.
And there's a whole, and you'll find less about them on their website and more about them sort of in Google, about all the big names that have already signed to do work. Basically, YouTube content made by super high talented people, but shorter stories and shorter bites. If, the guy who did Watchmen did a series of 15-minute episode show, is that worth your time to watch? Right? Because a 15-minute show ain't a lot of Netflix shows used to drag at certain parts. But if you only got 15 minutes to get your point in, that's all poignant shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Pow, 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 pow. How much would you pay for big names that you respect and love to have small, bite-sized episode shows? Nobody's playing in that space, really, right? No one, and now they're saying they can get you to buy it or pay for their service because of how many big names they have. So if you do the research on people that have already, big name people that have already started creating their stuff for this site, it's a big who's who kind of people.
Okay.
Uh, someone said how Dan Brown did the Da Vinci Code, the 464-page novel with very short chapters. So that the readers didn't have 30 to 40 minutes to sit down and read a big section, they could still have a good reading experience and not have to spend as much time.
Okay.
So basically, you would get a 2-hour series. The entire series was 2 hours, but your chapters would be 7 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And you could pick up where you left off. I think it's an interesting opportunity. You get enough people, and then, let's see, they signed Guillermo del Toro, Sam Raimi, a whole bunch of other people that are sort of, big. And I'm not saying this is guaranteed to work. I'm just saying, do you sit now and watch an entire episode of a show, or do you stop and come back to it later? Do you wait till the end of that episode before you walk away? How do you watch TV now?
I just sit there and watch it.
Until it's
Yeah, I
done.
typically wait to the end of the episode.
Yeah, sometimes I don't have time. Sometimes I just don't. I'm right here in something else.
Right.
Like my dog will be like, woo, and then I'll go see what's up with the dog, or somebody will call. And because I have to, I love compelling TV, but I have to be able to put it down.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Right? I don't want it to control me. So my conversation is TV. I give it its time. And then if time is up and I'm still in the middle or whatever, I just walk away. Because Netflix remembers where you left off, right? Amazon remembers where you left off.
Mm-hmm.
And I still may not watch any other TV. I still go back to that.
Right.
Right. But I don't do the 10 hours in one day of TV anymore.
Oh, yeah, binging.
And don't get me wrong. On occasion, I might. I'm not close to it. It's not wrong, but I may only give it 3 today, right? And then it may only gives me 2.5 episodes, right?
Yeah.
And then do I make myself stay? Or maybe I'm falling asleep because it's late. Do I make myself sit to the end, or do I just stop, go to bed, and come back to it when I'm clear-headed again?
I personally like and enjoy having a moment where you can just enjoy the section of time is dedicated primarily to comfort and ease. There's no work. There's no other thing else that's going to distract me. It's just movie time or show time. Not the channel, but it's just time for the show. And you're just actively watching this and committed to that peaceful moment in time. But to your point, there is also something to be said about if life happens outside the window, outside the door, you get a phone call that's necessary, you can pause and continue on later and do what you got to do now. They're both valuable, I think.
I know we got way off of comics, but yeah. I think this new service could really imagine if you had a comic and you really needed to do 7-minute chapters to tell the story right. Imagine what new comic stories could happen in 7-minute chapters.
I think the market's severely lacking in anthology series right now. It would be great if I could pick up one book a week and get 10 stories out of it. But
it's called heavy metal. They're still out there.
All right.
I don't know what it costs right now.
I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that magazine in a long time, so I don't.
I think it's still there. Let me see.
Fable's pretty good with that, I think. Are you familiar with the Fable comic?
I am not.
I'm not either. Yeah.
I might have to introduce you guys next week.
Well, is Fable that comic where all the characters from Fables are actually alive somewhere? Is that where? What is that book? What is that comic? Not comic. Video game. The Wolf Among Us.
Yeah, it was based on Fable.
It's from that. Yeah, I'm familiar with it that way. I guess heavy metal is still alive and well.
All right.
Subscribe if you like it, and why not?
And on that note, gentlemen, we're out.
Peace.